A girl waited on a bicycle for the ice cream truck, in front of her own house. Her little sister went inside for 90 seconds. When the sister came back, the bike was on the ground with a wheel still turning. 2 quarters lay on the pavement. Her ice cream money. The girl was gone. No scream, no car heard. Nothing. It happened on her own residential street, a few houses from her front door, at the dinner hour, with families inside every home on the block. For 25 years, there were thousands of tips, and not one of them led to her. Then, a quarter-century later, the detective who reopened the file said something the family had stopped letting themselves believe. He said he knew the shape of what happened, and he said the answer had been sitting a few houses away the entire time. Mikelle Diane Biggs was 11 years old, a 6th grade honors student in Mesa, Arizona. She played the clarinet, and she wanted to grow up to be an animator at Disney. She was 4 feet 8, with brown hair and hazel eyes, the kind of ordinary, specific child who exists in school photos in every town in the country. January 2nd, 1999, was a cool Saturday evening. The holidays barely over, the light already going. Just before 6 o'clock, Mikelle and her 9-year-old sister Kimber heard the ice cream truck somewhere in the neighborhood. That thin recorded jingle that pulls every kid on a block toward the street at once. They wanted to catch it. Mikelle took Kimber's purple bike and rolled it out to the corner of Toltec Street and El Morro Avenue, a few houses down from home, to wait. She had 2 quarters in her hand. This was the kind of street where nothing happens. Single-story stucco houses, low desert yards, a wide, quiet road in a winter dusk. Their mother, Tracy, was nearby, on the porch swing. The corner was in plain view of the house. It was the safest possible distance for a child to go. Kimber got cold. She ran back into the house to grab gloves, or to ask if there was more money, depending on which telling you hear. She was inside for somewhere around 90 seconds, the kind of gap a parent allows 1,000 times without a second thought. When Kimber came back out, the corner was empty. The bike was lying on its side. One wheel was still spinning, and on the ground beside it were the 2 quarters. Kimber ran to the house. Their mother, Tracy, had been on the porch swing minutes earlier and had gone inside. Now both of them came back out to a corner where a child had been only a minute and a half before and was not anymore. They called the police immediately. Officers and neighbors fanned out across the streets in the dark, knocking on doors, calling her name into yards. By that night, the search around Toltec and El Morro had become one of the largest in Mesa's history. Helicopters went up over the desert that ringed the city. Officers walked the irrigation canals that cut through the valley. They marked off grids in the empty lots and combed them on foot. The FBI came in. None of it was small or slow. From the first hours, this was treated as exactly what it looked like, a child taken in the open. They brought in scent dogs. The dogs picked up Mikelle's trail at the corner where the bike lay. They followed it a few feet, and then it stopped. Not faded, not lost in the desert wind. Stopped as if she had simply lifted off the pavement to investigators. That meant one thing. In those few feet, someone had pulled her off the street and into a vehicle. Sit with what that requires. A vehicle had to be on that corner or pull up to it. In the space of a minute and a half, a child had to be taken from a bike she was sitting on, with her hands full of coins, and put inside. And then the vehicle had to be gone before her sister came back out the front door. All of it in the time it takes to find a pair of gloves, which means the window was even smaller than 90 seconds. It means it happened on a residential street, at the dinner hour, with houses on every side, and not one person reported hearing a car, a struggle, or a sound. What followed was a search that would not stop. Helicopters over the desert, divers in canals, officers knocking on every door for blocks. volunteers walking shoulder to shoulder across empty lots. Hundreds of volunteers came out, strangers and neighbors both, to walk the desert in lines and call her name. The canals that ran through the valley were dredged. The open ground beyond the houses was crossed grid by grid. People who had never met the Biggs family gave up weekends to look for a girl they only knew from a flyer. For a while, the whole city was looking. A tip line was set up, and the tips came in by the thousands, sightings of a girl in a car, a man acting strangely near a park, an ice cream truck. Nobody could place. Each call had to be written down, sorted, and run to the end, because any one of them might be the one that mattered. Almost none of them led anywhere. They looked hard at the ice cream vendors working the area that night. They looked at the registered sex offenders living nearby. They drained suspicion into every corner of the neighborhood. One by one, the leads were checked, and one by one, they were cleared. The 2 quarters became the thing the public could not forget. The ice cream money she never got to spend, photographed on the pavement, printed on flyers, carried into 1,000 news segments. A whole city learned to recognize that image. And still, after the helicopters landed and the volunteers went home, there was nothing, no body, no clothing, no bicycle prints leading anywhere. Just the corner and the 2 coins, and a family that now had to learn how to wait. Inside the house, the waiting took a shape that is hard to describe. Tracy kept Mikelle's room the way it was. Kimber, 9 years old, carried something heavier than a 9-year-old should ever carry. She had been the last person to see her sister. She had gone inside for gloves. For the rest of her life, she would have to live inside those 90 seconds and wonder what would have happened if she had stayed at the corner. The family did interviews. They begged on camera. They marked the anniversaries because the alternative was letting the world forget. 1 year became 5. 5 became 10. Detectives retired. New ones inherited the box. And every January 2nd, the same image came back to the public mind. 2 coins on a sidewalk. The ice cream money she never got to spend became the way an entire city remembered her. The smallest possible amount of money, 50 cents, standing in for everything that was lost. The case went cold, the way cold cases do, not in a single moment, but in the slow drift of a story off the front page. The reporters stopped calling on the off years. The flyers faded in shop windows. But inside the house, nothing faded. A missing child does not become less missing because the world has moved on. And the whole time, the answer that mattered most was not somewhere out in the desert, or in another state, or in a stranger's car. Investigators kept circling back to the neighborhood itself, because somewhere in the canvassing, in the list of local men who had to be looked at, there was a name 2 blocks from the corner, a name that, at first, came with an alibi. There is a rule on this channel, and it matters most here. A person who has never been charged is not the same as a person who is guilty. What follows are the documented facts and what the police have said about them, and nothing more. The man lived in the same neighborhood as the Biggs family, about 2 blocks away. Police have said he was a registered sex offender, with prior convictions in more than 1 state, and he lived close. Close enough to walk to the corner where Mikelle disappeared. Years later, the detective who took the case would put it in plain words. He has said he believes the answer was close to home, not a stranger passing through, not a car from another state, but someone who already knew that street and knew how quiet it was at the dinner hour. On the evening of January 2nd, he said he had been at home in his garage watching the Arizona Cardinals game on television. People in the house backed him up. It was an ordinary alibi for an ordinary Saturday night, and it held. There was nothing about it, on its face, to make an investigator stop and look twice. That is the thing about a good alibi. It is supposed to be boring. So he was looked at, and he was not charged. And the case moved on past him the way it moved on past every other lead. For about 2 years, that alibi was simply a fact in the file. One name among the many local men a missing child case has to rule out, with an account of his evening that nobody had a reason to question. And then something happened to that man in an entirely different case. That put him in a place where the people who had given him his alibi no longer had a reason to protect it. In 2001, the neighbor was arrested and convicted in a separate, unrelated case. Police have said he beat and raped a woman who lived nearby. For that crime, he went to prison. And once he was locked away for that, the alibi he had given for the night Mikelle vanished began to come apart. According to police, the relatives who had vouched for him, his ex-wife and his former sister-in-law, recanted. They said the story they had told in 1999 was not true, that he had not been where he said he was, doing what he said he was doing, during the window when a girl disappeared 2 blocks from his door. This is the moment the case turns. A registered sex offender, living within walking distance, whose own family later told investigators his account of that evening was a lie. To the police, this is the man they most want to talk to, and it is worth being precise about what that does and does not mean. A recanted alibi tells you where a man was not. It does not tell you where Mikelle was, or who took her, or what happened in those 90 seconds. The people who recanted were not eyewitnesses to the disappearance. They were witnesses only to the story he had asked them to tell. But here is the wall they hit, and it is the reason there has never been an arrest in Mikelle's case. There is no body. There is no physical evidence tying him to her. A recanted alibi is not the same as proof. And so, for years, that is exactly where it stopped. For more than 2 decades, that wall held. The neighbor stayed in prison on the other conviction. The Biggs family kept Mikelle's name alive, and the file sat, with its prime person of interest and its missing proof. Then came January of 2024, 25 years to the month, and a Mesa detective named Paul Sipe pulled the case back open and said something that landed like a stone in still water. He said he believes this case can be solved. Not should have been, not could have been, can be, present tense. After a quarter century, the lead detective on a case with no body looked at what was there and said the answer is still reachable. That is not a sentence detectives use lightly. They know the cost of saying it to a family that has had hope used against it for 25 years. Part of what he pointed to was old, but it had never stopped mattering. Police have said that about 10 days after Mikelle vanished, a neighborhood block-watch camera captured the man they are focused on. A piece of footage, sitting in the file from the period right after she was taken. Sipe has also said the things investigators were missing in 1999. They may not be missing now. A quarter century brings new forensic tools, and it brings something else. People age, loyalties shift. The reasons someone had to stay silent in 1999 are not always the reasons they have today. A cold case is not a closed case. It is a case waiting for one of those reasons to change. Sipe has said plainly what he wants. He wants to sit across from the neighbor and ask the questions that were never fully answered. The man is in prison and reachable. The detective believes the truth is too. And for the first time in years, the case is moving again. There is one person who has carried this from the very first second. The little sister who ran inside for 90 seconds. Kimber, she was 9 years old at the corner. She is an adult now, and she has spent most of her life refusing to let her sister become a name nobody says anymore. She did not just wait, she became the lead advocate for the case. She has worked to teach officers how to respond to missing persons calls so that another family might lose fewer of those first, irreplaceable minutes than hers did. Think about what that means. The 9-year-old who ran inside for gloves grew up to stand in front of rooms full of police officers and tell them how the first minutes of a child's disappearance can be the difference between found and gone. She turned the worst 90 seconds of her life into the thing she teaches other people not to waste. The family has worked with an independent filmmaker on a documentary, telling the story in their own words rather than leaving it to fade into a cold case statistic. They have decided that if the world is going to remember Mikelle, it should remember her as a person, and not just as a poster. 5 years of anniversaries, of interviews, of keeping a corner from being forgotten. Because for the people who loved Mikelle, the cruelest part was never just that she was taken. It was that the taking happened so fast and so close that it felt like the world should have been able to stop it, and it could not. Mikelle Diane Biggs has never been found. The case is open. Mesa police say it is solvable. And the man they most want to talk to is alive and within reach. Somewhere there is an answer to what happened in those 90 seconds. Someone knows whether it was the neighbor 2 blocks away. Someone knows where a corner ends and the rest of the story begins. If you were in Mesa in 1999, near Toltec and El Moro, on a cool Saturday evening at the start of January, and you saw a car or a man or a girl on a purple bike, the people working this case still want to hear from you. It is not too late for that. 25 years is long enough that the people who were children then are grown, and the people who were grown then are old. Long enough that whatever held a tongue still in 1999 may have loosened. The detective working this case believes the answer is out there. In someone's memory, on a street where everyone said they heard nothing. He is betting that nothing was not the same as nobody. Because the bike has been picked up, the street is quiet again. But the 2 quarters are still there, in every version of this story, waiting on the pavement for a girl who went to buy ice cream and never came back.